actually be sharing further instructions as well as information on today's session through the Slack channel. So please go ahead and join, scan the QR code and join our session. All right, so to kick off today's, give me a while, So to kick off today's session, we are in for our Viz for Better Visithon final session. So we've actually gone through the Visithon, we have chosen our top 3, and today it's really to wrap up our entire process and to also celebrate the top 3 submissions, along with some sharing from our judges. So sit tight for the next 2 hours. It will be really exciting, and we are hoping to engage with the rest of the community today. So the agenda for today is a welcome and introduction. So we will be sharing a little bit more about the WASH issue at large. Why did we choose to focus on this issue? And then we will share about the top 3 visas of our competition. We will then go into group breakouts where you can engage in mini groups to explore more about this issue, as well as get your hands on with some of the visualizations. And we'll have a fireside chat with our judges to conclude the session. All right, so just some housekeeping first. In the chat box, you can type your questions at any point of time. And if you're prompted to share your screen, go ahead and click the green bottom at the bottom that says share, so you can go ahead and share your screen. All right, so we're good to go. So before we start off with this entire session, we want to share more about who is Data Plus Women. So Data Plus Women is a social meetup session where not just women, but men can join us to really come together to discuss issues, learn skills, and network within the data-related field. So it's actually a global meetup group with different local chapters user group. And we have Fish and Tanu, who are on the call today. They are our co-leaders for 2020 Data Plus Women. And they are really calling on for new 2021 leaders to lead the chapter for the upcoming year. And you can reach out to them through Instagram or Slack group to know more about what Data Women is. Along with me, I also have Edwin, and we are the event co-leads for today. So we were really passionate about visiting for a social good, and we really saw how Data Plus Women was doing that, and hence this event came to life. All right, so I'll be passing on the time to Edwin to share more about the WASH issue at large.
All right, thank you, Surong. And I'll be talking more about WASH in context and why we are even talking about this topic and what this whole event is about, right? So I'm sure you've joined us. For those that joined us over the last 3 weeks, you would know quite a lot. But I think I really just want to start with a story. And what's better story than to have some photos of me when I was a lot younger and have less gray hair, right? So this is actually a photo that I took when I was backpacking in China, right, in this part of Western China. The young man on the right is me, and beside me was somebody that was staying there, and he had a very interesting job of delivering water, right? And unfortunately, in this part of China, water doesn't come out from the tap. And when the water is being delivered, right, if you look at the photo on the left, that red bottle with the water in it, right, that came direct from the river that was running through this village. It was very heavily polluted. And clearly it's not something that anyone would drink, right? The bottle on the left is mine. I just put it beside for comparison. And this really highlights the problem that the world today faces, right? In the context of WASH. You have one side of China, which we are familiar with, rich. You turn on the tap, water comes out, whatever temperature you want it to be, and you travel across the other side of China, you don't even have water on the tap, much less clean water, right? So what does WASH mean, right? WASH, it's an acronym for water, sanitation, and health. And really, why does it matter? Well, 1 in 3 people in the world do not have access to safe drinking water, right? There's 2.2 billion people overall in the world denied access to their life and livelihoods. And over 1,000 children die daily from WASH-related diseases. And these are diseases that we can prevent with effective policies, with effective tools, right? These are preventable deaths. and safe drinking water ends chronic diarrhea and decrease the mortality rate, right? And I think lastly, for those that are in Singapore, you know, right? If you imagine if you turn on the water tomorrow, now you turn on the tap tomorrow and no water comes out, you would cry, and you call up your local MP, right? And you'd be like, this is a basic human right. And this is what water is, right? Water is a basic human right, and it allows communities to live healthy lives and break out the poverty cycle, and allows them to live the life that they should be having, right? So what have we done over the last 3 weeks? So if you joined us 3 weeks ago, we had our kickoff session where we introduced our participants to our data set. These are actually readily available data set for anyone that wants to try out this in your own free time. Came from the UN Joint Monitoring Program as well as the World Bank, right? And over the course of 3 weeks, we've seen some very creative and inspired visas that explores this issue, which we'll be sharing in a bit, right? And here today, we're at our final session, which you're going to hear a little bit more from our judges, right? Very distinguished people from the SDG Viz project, Water Room, and our resident master viser, Mira, will be doing the top 3 review in just a short moment, right? So very importantly, what you can take away from today, it's what this issue is and what can we do about it going forward. All right, and without further ado, let's go straight into our top 3 review.
Okay, thanks Edwin for sharing all of that. So let's go straight into our top 3 review. So before we share about our top 3, we wanted to share about how we actually came to arrive at this conclusion. So we actually judged the different Viz submissions based on 3 criteria. So storytelling, visual analytics, as well as visual impact, as well as analytics depth. So firstly, storytelling, we really wanted to see if the stories in the Viz was actually guided by a constant storyline and whether the problem statement identified was compellingly explored throughout the entire Viz. And then we also looked at what were the different choice of visualizations that were used to tell the story identified. And eventually we also looked at what were some of the inferences that were drawn from the data set that was used in that particular Viz and what kinds of methods of analysis was used. So today to review the top 3, I also have with me Mira. So Mira is a Tableau public ambassador and a featured author on Tableau Public. Please search her up. Her profile is amazing. You get a lot of inspiration from her Vizes as well. And she's a co-founder of the Data Plus Women Singapore group. Yeah, so hi Mira.
Hi, can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Hey, hi.
All right. So, okay, so I'll be walking through each of the Viz, and if your Viz is kind of called out, so feel free to share your screen and you can walk us through your Viz. But I know some of the top 3 won't be able to attend, but they have actually dropped a message for me to read to the rest of the crowd today. All right, so we'll start off with Ying Xue's Viz. So her Viz was really focusing on how do we determine whether WASH aid was distributed accurately across all the different ASEAN countries. So she's unable to join us today, but she wanted to share that she's incredibly grateful for the opportunity to contribute to such an important topic. It hasn't been the easiest data set to work with, but she's glad she gave it a try. So there's definitely some room of improvement, but hopefully this inspires anyone who haven't tried making a visualization to give it a shot. All right, so Tanu has actually dropped the link of the Viz in the chat box. And yeah, Mira, would you like to share what you liked about this Viz?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so firstly, I would like to congratulate everyone who have entered this competition, and it's definitely an honor to have judged such great entries, and a very important topic and a crucial topic that needs focus in many parts of the world. So glad that Data Plus Women Singapore community has considered this very important topic to bring some light and connect us to a wider audience. So coming to this Viz, what I liked about is it has a great storytelling and analysis. It's easy to read, and understand what the Wiz is trying to tell us. What can be improvised is that the design itself, the colors might be a little too overwhelming. Always go for subtle colors which might not overpower your dashboard. So topics like these should definitely have a call to action that will support this cause. So, but on a whole, it's really well done.
Okay, thanks for that, Mira. Yeah, I also particularly like the fact that well, the colors are really definitely very stark, and I also like the fact that she dived deeper into the HDI index to look at what were the other fields that would actually help with determining whether HDI index was something that was used to determine WASH 8. All right, so let's go to the next next top 3 Viz. So we have one from Li Jin that focuses on WASH 8 distribution as well across all the 3 countries, and they looked at specifically how WASH 8 was given to each of these sectors, so drinking water, hygiene, as well as sanitation. So is Li Jin there in the crowd somewhere? All right, I guess Legion is not with us today, but it's okay. Mira, would you like to share what are some of the comments that you have for this particular Viz?
Yeah, sure. So I really liked the use of, I mean, like when I looked at it for the very first time, I really like the colors. It's kind of consistent. It looks very simple and neat. So that's what I really liked about it. But also it really uses Vision tooltip. So when you hover on this dashboard, it has very heavy information on the tooltips, which is really, really great. So I really liked about that as well. And what can be improvised is definitely add a better title to the dashboard. So your title would definitely determine what you visualized, and it's easier for anybody looking at the Viz for the first time to understand the topic of Viz better. So that's the only thing that I thought was missing, but otherwise it's a great dashboard overall. Yeah, I really like the Vision tooltips that's been consistently used across all our graphs as well to show the trends. Yeah, which is really nice. So very well done and good job.
All right, thank you. So that's our that's our second Viz that made it to the top 3. And the very next Viz, last Viz, it's by, sorry, the title is a bit wrong, but it's by Siu Ling. So Siu Ling looked at clean water and sanitation in ASEAN countries. And yeah, I think Siu Ling is in the crowd today. Is Siu Ling there? Okay, I guess she didn't manage to make it.
Yes,
okay.
I'm here. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
trying to unmute myself.
So, do you want to share your screen, or I can actually toggle through the Viz as you talk us through the?
I can share my screen.
All right,
Yeah.
that's great. Thanks.
Okay, please hang on. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, I love it. All right, go
Okay,
take
thank
us
you.
through the Viz. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, and I'm Siu Ling, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to take part in this meaningful event. And I'm happy to give a sharing on my visualization. So the topic of my visualization is to highlight the WASH situation in the ASEAN countries. So the organizers had thoughtfully assembled a WASH data set for us to explore. And along with that, I had also researched various WASH-related websites to come up with the analysis. So I've structured the dashboard into a few sections to look into the latest situation, the issues faced in the various countries, and I also conclude to seek everyone's help in the WASH matter. So I will now go through the dashboard. Yeah, so in 2017, the World Health Organization and UNICEF United Nations Children Fund, estimates around 49 million people in ASEAN countries have no access to safe water, and around 81 million people in ASEAN countries have no access to adequate sanitation. So first, let us take a look at the various access levels to the drinking water and sanitation across different countries. So on my left, the map shows the overall population in each country, and the access to basic service level of water is depicted by the blue water droplet. So by hovering over the countries or the water droplet, we can actually find out the access level. So countries shaded in darker brown denotes a higher population, and darker shades of water droplet indicates higher access level to basic drinking water services. So for example, you can actually see that 94.7% of Vietnam's 95.5 million population have access to basic level of drinking water. And whereas Laos has about 82% of the population have access to basic level of drinking water. And on the right, we take another look at the various service levels to water and sanitation for each country. So simply toggle on the category and country to view the access level. So I've actually used the same color schemes as the way WHO and UNICEF had reported the WASH levels. And for example, let's take a look at Indonesia. Okay, let me give it a try again. Right, so for Indonesia, 89.3% have basic access to drinking water, and about 9.3% have no service access to drinking water. So if let's say we toggle to the sanitation category, we can also observe that 73.1% of population have basic access to sanitation, and about 14% have no service access to sanitation. And next, water pollution is also one of the factors impeding the access to clean drinking water. So the map on the left shows the map of Mekong River, which is actually the longest river in Southeast Asia and runs through several ASEAN countries such as Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. And millions of livelihood depends on this river for water and food. However, in recent years, the river had become a dumping ground for garbage, and in particular, having lots of plastic waste, and is actually one of the top 11 polluted rivers in the world, having about 22.8 K tons of plastic waste channeled to the world's riverbanks. So along with droughts and dams built along Mekong, in the north of Mekong especially, countries in the ASEAN countries are actually faced with a shortage of clean water. So if we hover over the map, we can actually see that plastic actually makes up 58% of the waste found. So next, we look into the ranking of countries having basic access to sanitation services over the past 10 years. So we can actually see that both Singapore as well as Malaysia actually rank first over the past years. And we also see that most countries actually improved in the recent years, but we also saw that Myanmar actually have dips in rank across the years. And perhaps more help can actually be provided to developing countries such as Myanmar, Indonesia, Laos, and Cambodia. So moving on, let's take a look at the mortality rate of countries in relation to sanitation access. So we can observe that countries such as Myanmar, Laos, Indonesia, and Cambodia, they actually have limited access to sanitation services. And like for example, Myanmar has around 65% access to sanitation basic access to sanitation services, and 69% of population have basic access to wash services for Laos. And also in general, these four countries, they have higher mortality rate. And the mortality rate is also depicted by the brown bars, whereas the sanitation access is actually depicted by the red line. So while progress were made to increase access to drinking water and sanitation over the years, however, most rural areas still lack basic sanitation services. So this is actually evident in places such as Cambodia, Laos and Indonesia, where a high percentage of population in rural areas actually still practice urban defecation. Safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene are basic human rights. And hand washing is also one of the effective ways that we can actually do to prevent the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19 virus. So the UN Sustainable Development Goal 6 also aims to ensure access to safe water and sanitation for all by 2030. And we can actually do so much more to help the less developing countries. So here are some of the steps that I've listed. So we can help to promote the importance of safe drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene. Also, try to reduce the use of plastic wherever possible, recycle, and do not litter. And also, we try to do our part to support charity organizations to actually bring safe water to those in need. So let's all do our part. And last but not least, I would like to thank the organizers, Edwin, Sirong, Tanu, and Fish for holding this event. Also for really putting in a lot of effort to come up with a starter kit and kickoff sessions to guide us through. And the past week had really been very hectic for myself as I was actually working off this dashboard during weekends and at nights, and also Googling a lot to come up with the various dashboards. But I enjoyed the process of vising and will continue to learn Tableau along the way. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Siling. That was really good to hear, and I really like the structure of the dashboard and how in depth you actually went to explore the topic. And I actually gathered a lot more insights after looking at your dashboard as well. Yeah. So Mira, would you like to share some of the comments that the judges have for this particular dashboard?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, congratulations, Yulang, for winning this competition.
Thank you.
When I looked at this list for the very first time, I thought it had some really great storytelling and analysis. So that, and of course the call to action at the end, which is great as well. So this is like these should definitely have a call to action, and you made sure to include that, which is great. And though, you know, some of the charts can really be improvised, but I really liked how the flow is, like how you've separated the different sections, and it's really well done. So congratulations to you once again. Yeah.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you.
All right, thanks Mira for that, and thanks Yuling for that. Yeah, so that's for our top 3 review. Let me share back my screen. Right. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. So for the top 3 winners, we actually have attractive prizes to be won. So we have actually packaged a Tableau swag pack that we will be sent to your place to really thank you for putting in all the effort to create that viz and actually joining us to actually explore more about this certain topic. And your dashboards will also be featured on the SDG Viz project page. So basically they are a viz as shared previously, the SDG Viz project really looks at exploring more viz with relation to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So yes, hopefully you'll see your viz on that page itself, and feel free to check out check out more about their visors, their other participant visors on their page, because it's really informative as they not just look at goal 6, which is the area of interest for water and sanitation, but also looking at the other UN Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah, so without further ado, we'll go into our group breakouts session. So this group breakout session is really for us to engage with our community, because Data Plus Women is really all about that community, right? If we are not in a not virtual setting, we will be interacting and seeing each other face to face. So to really break the ice, we're going to do a challenge together, which will be we have 5 questions related to Tableau as well as the WASH issue at large. And we'll be segregating you guys into breakout rooms, and feel free to share your screen and actually look through the questions that we have prepared for you. So the fastest 2 teams will get a special surprise at the end of this entire event. All right, so I'm going to hand it over.
I think everyone is back in the main room now, right? So in the next segment, we're gonna have a fireside chat with our judges, right? We actually had 2 judges, but unfortunately, Vinod is not able to join us today because there was a huge storm in Chennai, and he has no electricity. So he sends his apologies, and I think this is a stark reminder of how weather, whether there's too much water or there's too little water affects us, and especially in the developing world, right? And I think David would share more about that in a bit, right? So just want to introduce David. Surong, can you go to the next slide, please? Right, so David is the CEO and co-founder at WaterRoam. I'll let him explain what WaterRoam is in a bit, because he would do it way better than I am. And we're gonna hear from him shortly on how this issue actually affects communities on the ground, and what you can do about it to make the world a better place, right? So without further ado, I'm gonna pass the time to David, and he's going to share his screen. And while he's doing that, if you have any questions at any point in time, just feel free to use the chat box, put your questions in there, and I think David would be very happy to pick it up.
Okay, thanks, Edwin. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much to everybody and the organizers for putting this together. I'm very heartened to be able to see all the efforts and work that has been put in to help to promote and visualize the issue and the crux of this matter being water challenges all across the world. I think this is an issue that definitely can be addressed with greater emphasis on many global fronts. And I'm glad that this is one small step moving forward, and definitely appreciate all of your submissions as well for those participants. I think I'm also very encouraged to be able to see how much time and effort you have put in to be able to come up with wonderful pieces of visualizations that have also allowed me to gain more new insights about this industry that I've been in over the past 6 years. Right, so today I'm happy to share a little bit more about some of our ground experiences running a social enterprise, tackling the issue of global water challenges and the issue of waterborne diseases. Right, so I'll just give a short sharing about what we have been doing and how we tackle it, and hopefully that is a little part of what we can also do to exchange notes and pointers on how we can tackle this challenge with more efficacy over time. Right. So my journey started off 6 years ago, and as I was about to graduate, and I was doing my usual runs across my reservoirs, and we're having this scenery where you have like lovely water features, water bodies all across Singapore, right? I see some of this, and at a point I was reminded that of the number of trips that I've gone overseas, mission trips, deployment trips, and various overseas community programs. And I'm reminded that we've been so blessed here in Singapore. When we turn on a tap, we have access to clean water. But for many other countries, this was not the case. And I decided, why not let's do a little bit more research and look at what really is the issue out there. So like many of you who have seen this set of data, we have 2.1 billion people in the world. That's what I realized through various research, that still are drinking fecally contaminated water, and especially countries that are with greater intensity of this shade of red and color. We see that some of them are quite close to the region of Singapore, and Southeast Asia actually has quite a number of countries that are at such risk. So I thought that this is something that we should look further into. I went to travel and find out the problem for myself. So I spent 6 months after the graduation to look at and see what was going on with this situation. So all these pictures are actually what either myself or my team members took. It's not from Google, but it's first-hand experiences of pipelines in Cambodia being contaminated and murky. We witnessed a village in Malaysia where the women and children would typically walk about 1 hour to this location and collect water, murky water that they would then drink directly without further treatment. In Philippines, we see that villagers are queuing for a trickle of water that comes down from the slope of this cliff, because that is typically cleaner compared to the river that they are standing on. And then other places like Nepal, you have spring water. Bangladesh, you have potholes, and many of the communities are drinking directly from such water sources. I think what really broke our heart is when we see children, especially, are the ones that face the big portion of the issue. Many of them are affected in their ability to go to study effectively because they are missing out from school due to sicknesses. And what we see is a bigger problem is that the lack of clean water actually causes poverty and keeps them in a poverty cycle. Because without proper education and proper health, that causes a child to have limited work opportunities subsequently when they don't have the stature or the proper education to help them to get better opportunities. And then subsequently it leads to lack of basic necessities and also back to the lack of clean water. Right, so we see that clean water is a starting point to a route out of poverty, and it is so critical that those of us who have been a lot more privileged here in Singapore to do something about it. I think we also started to look at what are the various solutions out there and try to investigate what is the issue, and we realized that actually there's no lack of solutions. There are a lot of solutions out there which have been utilized, deployed over time. But we see that the challenge is that many of the solutions that exist for our developed society here in Singapore, for example, such as laying pipelines and having a centralized treatment plant, it doesn't work as efficiently when there are communities which are scattered and population are all over the different countrysides, villages, and it becomes very expensive to be able to pipeline water, clean water supply to all these different villages. So, and as a result, many of these large-scale projects tend to be delayed, or it doesn't take place simply because the funding and the break-even point does not justify why such projects should be privatized and should proceed. Right. In other more traditional filters or other smaller scale solutions, we see other forms of challenges with it. I think one bigger issue also is that we're seeing the rural pay a lot more for clean water. Like, for example, in Singapore here, the average household income provided by MOM is 8,000 US per month. We consume quite a lot of water. A family of 4 typically would consume 18,000 liters per month. Yet we're only paying about $35 to the PUB for our clean water supply. Now, in comparison, if we get a household in Cambodia, the average household income is about $200 per month, and they consume about 10 times less of water simply because they don't have access to that much water. They don't have a tap water supply, and their family, let's say, is about 4. They only consume about 1,800 liters. Based on the existing solutions, they're paying about 1.7% at the lowest, all the way up to 36%. And what we see in the as part of statistics is that 70% of such communities in developing countries like Cambodia and Indonesia or Philippines 70% of them are still utilizing bottled water, simply because it's much more accessible. It's the fast and quick band-aid solution, but oftentimes it is very expensive, costing up to 1/3 of a person's or a household income. And this makes it very, very inaffordable to be able to get access to clean water. Yeah, to make matters worse, there are such natural disasters that would wipe out infrastructure that's been painstakingly built over time. And that causes many of countries across Asia to be affected, especially Philippines. Philippines is the #1 country in the world, based on the World Disaster Report, to be affected by disasters every single year. So in light of all this, we realized that we had to do something about it, right? So we just graduated. What could we really do? We didn't really know, but we just had a mission. And so we started our journey going down on the ground, working with NGOs like World Vision and just conducting interviews. So we went to many of the local villages in Malaysia, just next door, travel all the way to Kelantan area. And we conducted interviews, had chats, and mostly you see that we will be chatting with women because they're the ones that are really concerned about the health of their families, and they're the ones that who will take action about such issues. And so most of the time we see that we are conducting a few studies and interviews with the women of the village. And then we started to do our prototyping and started to investigate what are the potential ways that we can be able to filter water effectively. We tried it out across in Singapore and parks, some of the parks here in Singapore first, before moving overseas. And we actually failed at many early prototypes, almost 20 prototypes, which didn't work out simply because it didn't adapt well with local culture. People weren't used to it, or it was just not as efficient because of the design technically. But eventually, the aha moment came when we realized that we had to design based on these three principles of design. It had to be safe for consumption. It had to be simple to be utilized even by laymen and people who may not have deep technical know-hows in engineering. And it also must be swift so that it can be brought into the hardest to reach places in the world. Yeah, so the aha moment came when we saw somebody who was using a bicycle pump to pump his bicycle. And we thought, that's a universally understood action. How about we incorporate that together with membrane filters and be able to allow the bicycle pump to also filter water. Right, so today, one of our flagship products is this product called the Room Filter Plus, where it operates like a bicycle pump. You find a source of water, then you set it up, plug it in, and then you start to pump. So every stroke of the pump, when you pull it up, it causes the column of water to enter into the system. And then once you push down, it goes through a filtration process by physical membrane filtration process. So it causes all the bacteria and the virus to be rejected. It cannot pass through this net, and only clean water can pass through. So even if the water is quite murky, it can still be able to appear as transparent and pretty clean after it's filtered. And it's pretty fast, so it can be able to produce about 20 liters of clean water in just 5 minutes. So we're thankful that over the past few years, about 3 years since we launched this product, it's been utilized across various countries around Asia for the purpose of disaster relief. Usually we partner with NGOs on the ground like Red Cross to be able to bring it out. And post-disaster recovery, the period of 1 to 2 years before infrastructure is put back into place. We also had one of this deployment with the armed forces, SAF in Singapore, going over to Philippines. This was one of our more dangerous missions because we had to go to Marawi, which was infiltrated by ISIS terrorists, and the main population had escaped to a certain refugee camp. And so as part of diplomatic relations, we were part of the crew that had to board the C-130 and deploy some of our systems over. And on a long-term rural basis, day-to-day for rural villages. We also provide water filtration systems in Cambodia, across India, for example. Yeah. One of the newer things that we've been doing is this thing called micro entrepreneurship. So the villages are also able to utilize our system to fill up these bottled waters, and then they would run this as a business. So they would sell the bottled water at a quite cheap rate, about 25 cents to 50 cents to their neighboring community. So that helps to bring down the cost of water compared to other vendors, which tend to be a lot more expensive. Yeah, so today what we have is we're able to bring down the cost of water to just 70 cents per month for a household in developing countries like Cambodia. And that helps to match the pricing to what we are also having here in Singapore at 0.4% of income. And we hope that through that helps to provide equal access to clean water. And so far, we are thankful to have reached out to 38 countries with 100,000 people through all the various organizations, NGOs that we've been working with, and continuing to improve 1.5 million lives over the next 2 years through improving their quality of life, improving clean and their living standards by providing a clean and healthy living environment that comes with clean water, and also improving livelihood through increased job opportunities like the micro-entrepreneurship model, or basically if people have access to clean water, they generally will find themselves being higher in productivity and able to obtain better jobs and livelihood, and therefore have higher self-esteem. Yeah, so to end off, here are 3 simple ways that we can start, and I'm glad that some of you have some of these in place as well. So firstly, you can learn how to conserve water. Clean water is very precious. Today, we don't actually, in the world, we don't have a shortage of water, but we have a shortage of clean water or safe water for drinking. And many of our waterways are becoming more polluted. So if we have water that is painstakingly treated by various technologies, it is definitely helpful to conserve them. Be aware of your water footprint, because everything we eat actually entails the utilization of water. So even though, for example, we eat just 300 grams of beef, actually it takes 4,650 liters of water to produce that beef. I think as much as many of us are concerned about carbon footprint, but I think in the future, what we should start looking at also is the water footprint. Right? Second is to participate in cleanup efforts. So there are, you can volunteer for a beach cleanup or one of those cleanups at waterways, so that it at least helps us or of our family members to get in tune with what it means to take care of our water sources and all the painstaking efforts that the government has put in to create reservoirs and beautiful sceneries. All these are actually something that we should appreciate, because not every country has some of these measures to help keep our water sources clean. Right? And lastly, of course, is to give the gift of clean water if you have the ability. There are many possible water and sanitation projects out there that can be done. Feel free to connect with our Facebook or Instagram page, where we can be able to share some of these projects with you. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you very much for having me, and it's an honor to be able to judge some of the entries, and very encouraged to be part of this community and to share with you, and hope that you too can be able to continue on this journey of understanding more about WASH and taking practical action towards making our world a better place. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, David. Right, so we're gonna take some questions from the crowd, and if you have any questions, just feel free to put it in. I see one from Sarong already, but I do have one question before we get to that one, right? So we know that access for clean water, it's something that everyone needs, but Does the lack of access to clean water impact particular groups from your deployments on the ground, David?
The lack of access to clean water tends to happen in rural communities. I would say that many of these lack the decentralized pipeline solutions or tap water pipelines that many urban environments have. So as a result, the rural tend to be the ones that are most affected. And then most of the time, they're also less resilient to natural disasters. So we're seeing this right now in the case of Philippines. They have experienced about 20 cyclones, or rather 20 typhoons this year itself. There's currently the 21st or the 22nd one that's ongoing. So many a times the rural communities or the urban poor are also quite affected. Those who might be in the fringes of the main city, they're there to find a job, but they don't actually have proper housing. So many of their access to clean water is very limited. It can come through tankers or it can come through community taps, which can be quite lacking in sanitation and hygiene. And even with tanker water, actually, when we take a quality check of many of this tanker water, it is also quite questionable in terms of the quality. So as much as they're paying quite a bit for such tanker water, it still can end up being contaminated. Yeah.
Right, and Sirong wants to know how many households can you target with each mission trip, and how do you usually conduct your enablement sessions for the village to teach them about the Roam filter?
Right. Yeah, good question. Usually, in terms of the deployments, we have to get local province authorities to give us a go-ahead. I think what we realized in doing water missions is that if you don't get the blessing of the local authorities, they might get offended because you're coming in to show that they have a gap or they have not addressed this for their population. And so we've gone to certain villages where the police chief will run after us and say, hey, you have no license to be here, so please get out. Or the village chief or the local minister actually comes in and say that, hey, you're doing something that showcases that I'm not taking care of my people, so you shouldn't come in and infringe. Yeah, so what we realize is that it's very important to get local buy-in first before doing any projects. And once you get a buy-in, usually they would be able to help you to decide on how big this deployment should be. So if you get a local province chief to provide permission, then he can potentially open it up to 10 villages, 5 villages, depending on how many villages are under his covering and under his instructions. Yeah, so every village depends on how many people are there. Certain villages can be a few hundred people. Some villages are only about 20, 30 people each. So it really varies from mission to mission. We've also been to certain communities, for example, in Philippines, where you have to travel to this place called General Santos, this airport, and then after that, have to take a 4x4 vehicle, 2 hours in, and then another 5 hours by horse into a very secluded village. And by then, because we're only on horsepower, we can only carry a certain number of systems, right? So it's a good thing that our systems weigh only about 4 kg each. So we can still be able, and each system can cater to about 100 people. So we can, with our system, still be able to bring quite a bit of support, quite a bit of people. Typically, one system would provide enough for one village of up to 100 people. So that time when we had to go by horsepower, potentially we could take about 3 to 4 per horse, depending on whether the horse is strong enough or not. And it still had to carry us, right? So there were certain weight limitations. Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Different deployments have different requirements. Yeah.
Right, that's really interesting, and it's really good to hear from you what is happening on the ground. So just right, I think there is a follow-up question, and okay, I think this follow-up question is a good one to actually wrap it up and do a bit of a closing, right? So we've heard from you about the stories on the ground, and I think one of the challenges I had when making the data set is that data it's really hard to come by, right?
Yeah.
So how do you identify a need to address, right? And if we want to do more, right, where should we go for this knowledge? And how can we educate ourselves on this matter?
Right. Yeah, that's a very good question, because before we do any deployment, actually it's very important to do needs-based analysis to understand what is the situation on the ground first. So we actually have this document where we will send to the local NGO or the local person who's working on solving this problem to do an assessment. What is the current water source? What is the current community size? What is the way that they are getting their water transportation? How do they store their water? And eventually, how do they treat the water? So we want to understand various aspects of their water situation first before we do any form of recommendation. Sometimes they already have existing water infrastructure that is available, so we can be able to help to save costs by leveraging on some of these existing water infrastructure. Like they already have certain tanks, storage tanks or piping, we can be able to leverage on that. Or if they already have a well, then you save a lot more money if you are not required to dig a new well. Yeah, so data sets wise, certain countries have a set of local data from the equivalent of the PUB, but a lot of times you find that it's quite lacking in data. So sometimes between NGOs, it's what they do is they share data, but that may not be very updated as well. But at least we get a good indication, because some places you are concerned about whether they have regular contamination with heavy metals or maybe contamination by farming. There are certain seasons where we see, for example, in Malaysia, a lot of palm oil plantations, and the danger is on certain seasons where they are massively using fertilizers. It causes a very big algae bloom in the water, and then you see many kids actually suffer, and a lot of them die during this certain season simply because they're drinking water that has a lot of algae inside, and that's very dangerous, especially for children. So what we see is that it's a lot of this know-how on the ground may not be translated into a global database right now, and even the UN may not have some of this data. So it's really going down to the ground on a grassroots level and trying to ask the village chief, ask the NGO, local NGO, or somebody who might have a little bit more experience working with the community in order to gain access to some of this data.
Right, and right, thank you for that, David. And I think for everyone in the audience here, right, I think one of the key things that we can do really is to raise awareness of the issue on the ground. Personally, I didn't know that water was an issue, right? Grew up very sheltered in Singapore. I thought that water is something that comes out from the tap. And it's something that you take for granted. And I think bringing that awareness, spreading that message that this is actually a huge problem in the world, would make a great change. And I think in terms of materials, the Water Room website has a very very knowledgeable water knowledge bank. So you can check out their website for it. Right. So I just want to thank David once again for judging all this competition. And also thank my other two judges, Mira and Vinod, for taking time out for this. And thank you, David, for your sharing. Right, so I am going to pass the time back to Tanu, who will wrap up the session.
Perfect. Thank you, Edwin, and thanks, David. I think you're by far the most interesting person I have spoken to since the start of CB. I think we can just have a session completely with you. I mean, one thing I want to know is how you are constantly facing all these risks that your job's putting you to, and how you've kind of pushing on. That's very, very cool. Okay, I'm going to quickly, because I know we have 5 minutes left. The first thing is congratulations again, Siling. You won the next part. You're quite the winner for today. So if you could just maybe unmute Jiawen, you and Siling got 100%, I believe. Zarong has the results. And if you guys can see us, then I think it's you are both going with a t-shirt. Siling, since you won the Visathon, you're going to also have this t-shirt there, so you can give one to your someone in your family if you'd like.
Okay.
I have
Thank
your
you.
address.
Thank you.
Tiawan, I will need you to drop me a Slack message with your address so that I can ship this across to you. Thank you. I think Isha and Celine had done a great effort. Zurang, they got most of the questions right? I think just one more. Okay. So good job, Isha and Celine. Just you missed them by one. And we can send the right answers after this session. Congratulations, both of you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so just going forward, what can you do? So I think I know Ziavan had also submitted a viz, so thanks for doing that as well. Continue your journey. If you're not already following the data fam, I would highly recommend that you do that. We're very active on Twitter primarily. So basically the idea is as soon as you post something, since you already have some vizzes, go ahead, upload it on Tableau Public, put that on the Twitter page. And once you hashtag DataFam, you'll get part of the whole thread. So then someone who has feedback, they can do that and give it to you. Get involved with the SDG Viz project. We'll be sending you links of all of this after the session in our thank you message as well. There are also multiple data projects that are getting done. So in case you kind of enjoyed the Vizzing aspect of this Vizathon, then I would recommend going through the Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday kind of projects so that you can continue upskilling yourself. Other than that, like Zarang had mentioned right in the starting, we are going into the next year and we definitely want community leaders. Data Plus Women is technically by the community for the community. So we would want anyone who's interested to step up and lead the team. Like I said, you'll be redirected to the Insta page. So if you're interested, it's already on the chat. Otherwise, you can follow us. I wanted to give a big thank you to Zarang and Edwin. They've put in a lot of work to make this possible. They've spent a lot of time in developing the data sets, developing the slides, coordinating with me, coordinating with Fish, coordinating with the rest of the marketing team. So thank you so much. Edwin's also very passionate. Actually, both of them are very passionate about this, but this was an idea that came. So thank you so much for both of you. Then of course we have a whole marketing team who's helping and our judges. As well as Jackie and Brian. They were two people who sort of did the sharing initially. Jackie did the sharing and Brian coordinated it to help us learn how to do visualization best practices, and we can send that recording that she sent to kind of get you started if you're looking at it. So we're mostly done. I think for the last 1 minute, we just want to take a quick picture. Obviously, we're not together, so it would be a Zoom selfie. So if you could just, if you don't mind and you're comfortable, if you could just put your video on, that would be great. I think we're not sharing, I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm not sharing my screen. Yeah, no one's sharing the screen, so we can just move this to a gallery view. So if you're comfortable, Isha, Celine, Siawan, if you're comfortable, please switch on your video. Otherwise, we will go ahead and take this picture. I will go ahead. Okay, you will have to say cheese in. Actually, I shouldn't say cheese, right, David? That had a very bad water footprint. What's a good product?
Wheat.
Okay, let's say wheat. At the count of 3, I will ask you to say wheat. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Wheat. I just realized I was the only one on unmute. So if y'all said wheat, I didn't hear you. But anyway, Okay, I have got the picture. Thank you everyone for joining today. Stay engaged. Let us know if you have any questions. We're going to keep the Slack open as the next part of what Data Women is going to be primarily communicating between. And again, thank you for everyone for joining. Thank you especially to David for being a judge and for sharing, and good luck with all that you're doing after this. Edwin and Zarang, any closing things, or you good?
No, just
Thank
wanted to
you.
thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.